So what she wants to do here is kind of hone in on this number 4 here, this principle number 4. And she talks, this next section is entitled Tests for Truth. And she says that Ignor's story illustrates the 2 major ways to test a philosophy or worldview, right?
Right.
So the first one is, does it fit the facts? And that's what we looked at in chapter 3, right? Does it fit the facts? Does the worldview, does the philosophy fit the facts, the world as it presents itself to us, right? And of course, it's pretty difficult to avoid that, right? In other words, if there's a wall there and I don't believe it's a wall there and I take off running, right? And I think I've given this illustration before, I'll hit the wall. So my theory that there's no wall there doesn't fit the facts. And in that instance, I pay for it, right?
Right.
So first, does it fit the facts? And secondly, is it logically consistent? Is it logically consistent? So she says these are the same questions raised, in testing any data, whether it's in a science lab, a court, asking a friend why, they're late. Does the explanation match what we know about the world, principle 3, and does the explanation hold together logically? She said these are the 2 ways that we test the philosophy.
Right. So speaking to that second point, and you're using your wall illustration, by saying there's no wall there and you point to it, you can kind of internally critique it and say, well, what are you pointing at if you don't, what are you referring to if you don't believe there's a wall there? You could say something like, I believe that wall is fake, or, there's a projection.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But to say there's no wall there, that's where we can kind of start critiquing internally that person's point of view. First of all, okay, well, let's explain this wall thing first before you start getting running speed. And what are you referring to if it's that philosophy joke of the professor gives people at the end of the class to say, prove that this chair doesn't exist. And the one guy gets up after, 3 seconds, writes on a piece of paper, turns it in, and he writes down what chair, and he walks out,
Yeah. So does it fit the facts? Does the theory fit the facts? Does the worldview fit the facts? And is it logically consistent, right? She says internal contradictions are fatal to any worldview because contradictory statements are necessarily false, right? The circle of square is contradictory, so it's necessarily false, right? And scripture, she points out, assumes that logical contradictions cannot be true, right? No liars of the truth, 1 John 2:2. Mm-hmm. But God never lies, Titus 1:2, right? So, an especially damaging form of contradiction, she points out, is self-referential absurdity, which means a theory sets up a definition of truth that itself fails to meet. So here's the definition of truth. The theory says this is what truth is all about, but the theory doesn't meet that definition of truth. And so it refutes itself, basically, is what she's getting at here. And she points out a couple of illustrations here. She talks about, you probably heard the argument from self-referential absurdity, when relativists say something like, there are no absolute, there are, you ask them, is that absolutely true, right? Or the skeptic who says, we can't know anything for sure. And of course, we would ask, do you know that for sure, right? And so in each of these cases, the critic is turning the claim back on itself to show that it undercuts itself, that is, it is self-refuting, right? She points out that apologist Greg Koukl calls this saying that the philosophy commits suicide, right? In other words, he uses a graphic illustration. It kills itself, it slits its own throat, right? So, and she mentions that sometimes people, dismiss this as a rhetorical trick, but, again, it's not. It's a logical necessity, right? Mm-hmm. If it doesn't fit, right, then if it doesn't cohere, if all the statements of the theory, that sort of thing aren't, can't fit together without contradicting one another, that's a good indication that you have serious problems with the things that you're doing.
Right.
She says, in fact, we discovered that virtually all idol-based worldviews are self-refuting. Right? Why? Because they're reductionistic. And so, if you reduce particularly the human mind down to, let's say, physical processes only, then you leave out rationality and reason. And now, how can you reason about the mind if it's only a physical process and there is no reason, right? So, so she's making this point that reductionist is the reason why worldviews have problems with regard to logical consistency. But of course, she raises the question, as soon as Christians raise the problem of contradictions, we likely get pushback from people claiming that Christianity self-contradicts, right? They point to the doctrine of the Trinity, right? Or Jesus' statements like, you must lose your life in order to save it. She says, but these are not genuine logical contradictions, right? In logic, the law of non-contradiction states that two antithetical propositions cannot both be true at the same time and in the same sense. And so, biblical theology does not say that God is one in the same sense that God is, three. So there's no contradiction, right? We have God as person and God as essence. There are two different senses of the words with regard to the numbers, is what she's suggesting. And of course, Jesus, she says, was using paradoxical language to make his point. More to the point, she says, Christianity is not self-referentially absurd because it's not reductionistic regarding human reason. It's not self-refuting. It doesn't commit suicide. Right? So again, the problem with these worldviews, especially things like naturalism, is when reductionism is applied to the human mind, it reduces reason to something less than reason.
Right.
And says that our ideas in our mind are products of natural selection, Darwin, or in economic conditions, Marx's, or electrochemical responses of the brain, contemporary neuroscience. Yet the only way a worldview can build its own case is by using reason. And so she points out this inherent contradiction as a result of worldviews reductionism.
Right. Because if you're not using reason, you're not putting forth anything. And so there's no conversation by definition being had. If you're trying to say, well, that wall doesn't exist, you're using, even though it may be flawed, reason to try and convince me that exists. We're having a conversation and you're saying something like you can't trust your senses. So you're putting forth a argumentation. You're using reason. And I'll say, what are you referring to? Well, look at it. See right there. You can't trust your senses. Well, okay, but I'm looking at it. I'm using you're telling me to use my senses in order to look at it. So.
Or I'm listening, or so you're asking me, or assuming that I'm listening to you. I'm using my senses.
There you go.
So
there you go. Yeah.
How can I trust what you're saying if I can't trust my senses?
all husbands know the take out the garbage line. I'm sorry, what? Yeah.